I'm Snoop Dogg, and I'm giving up smoke. I know what you're thinking. Snoop, smoke is kind of your whole thing. But I'm done with it. I'm done with the coughing and my clothes smelling all funky. I'm going smokeless. Solo stove, fixed fire. They took out the smoke. Now you can have a nice blaze without any clouds ruining your day. Go smokeless. Go to solostove.com. Tell them Big Snoop Dogg sent you.
The first ever NBA in-season tournament is heating up, and teams are ready to take it to the next level.
The stakes are the highest.
Group play was a battle, and now we're set for one and done, single elimination.
It's win or go home.
The first ever NBA Cup is at stake. History is calling.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
This is NBA basketball at its highest level.
Time to find out who's ready to answer. Don't miss the NBA in-season tournament knockout rounds, Monday and Tuesday on TNT.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to the end of the year edition of the Hey, Did You Know podcast. So year end means holidays. Hey, did you know Americans eat 1.4 billion pounds of turkey every Thanksgiving?
Well, year end also means the Hyundai Getaway Sales Event. Hey, did you know it's the best deals of the season on Hyundai's most popular vehicles?
Well, isn't that interesting? And since we were talking turkey, hey, did you know only male turkeys gobble?
Hey, did you know every new Hyundai comes with America's best warranty and 3 years or 36,000 miles of complimentary maintenance?
Hey, did you know the Statue of Liberty is the largest holiday gift ever given?
Hey, did you know when the year ends, so do the deals?
December 30th is National Bacon Day, you know.
It's your journey. Own every mile at the Hyundai Getaway Sales Event. Get 0% APR for 60 months, plus 0 payments for 90 days, or $2,500 bonus cash on the Hyundai Tucson. Now, during the Hyundai Getaway Sales Event. Offer ends January 2nd. Call 562-314-4603 for details.
It's time to get in the zone. Time to get in the zone with the 49ers Web Zone. This is the No Huddle Podcast with Al and Brian.
49ers Web Zone, No Huddle Podcast, part of the Odyssey family. I'm Al Sacco with Brian Renick, and our guest, if you follow the NFL, he really needs no introduction. He is a legend in the business who's been covering the league for decades. You can find him on NBC Sports and his podcast, the Peter King Podcast. He is the legendary Peter King. Peter, thank you so much for giving us some time.
Al, Brian, my pleasure. Thanks a lot for having me.
So, Peter, I have to start out. I'm a writer at heart. You know, I kind of got sucked into this podcast thing as it's the medium now, as most of us have. But me, like a lot of people, I've read your Monday morning column for years and years, and it's one of my favorites. And when I was thinking of questions to ask you, I'm like, all right, I'm reading this column at 8 a.m., 9 a.m. on the East Coast, and the last game ended about 8 hours ago. And I'm thinking to myself, does this guy sleep? Like, how does he put this column together? So I wanted to ask you about the process of that column, how it comes together. Is it something you're working on throughout the day? Is it a crunch time thing when the last game ends? How does that column come together for you from Sunday to Monday?
Well, basically what happens is the column is developed over a 27-year span, I guess now. I think that's how long I've been doing it. I did it as Monday morning quarterback for Sports Illustrated, starting in 97. So I did it there for 21 years or so, I guess. But anyway, so honestly, over the years, kind of been a labor of love because I just sort of view this as sort of my repository to put everything I've heard, everything I know, everything I think that week about the NFL. And then there are some life things in there as well. But what I basically do is I start the column like on Friday. I'll get up and maybe I'll answer some of the email in the column. I'll put that in the column. I'll do 2 or 3 sections of the column and I'll have that done by end of day Friday. In between making a bunch of phone calls and doing some interviews. And then I write much of Saturday. So by the end of Saturday, by the time I go to bed, I've got maybe 4,500 words done on the column, all the stuff that isn't really timeless or related to the games. Then, on Sunday morning, I take Chuck the dog for about a 4-mile walk in my neighborhood in Brooklyn. and just try not to listen to anything really. Or maybe I'll listen to a non-sports podcast. I'm a true crime podcast guy. I'm listening to the Rob Reiner podcast on the Kennedy conspiracy theories now. So, I just try to get away from it. And then, and I don't watch the pregame shows. Not that I don't like them, but, enough already. And then I mostly have the red zone and one game on during the day because really it's hard. Like I had the 49ers Eagles game on the other day. You had to have that on for the whole game. But usually there's one game of the day that I really want to watch for whatever reason. So I'll have red zone and then that game on. And after the 1:00 games, there's usually maybe 3 lines I put in the water to go interview somebody after a game. Last week, I think it was Jared Goff after the Lions win and a couple others, Kevin Stefanski. So, and anyway, this week I knew that I was going to write the majority of my column on the Niners-Eagles game, whatever happened. So, made a lot of notes about the game, talked to Christian McCaffrey just before they left Philly to fly back. And then it's just a matter of sprinting to the finish, honestly, to just write as fast as you can. I have an interesting theory about writer's block. My theory about writer's block is that's somebody who doesn't have a 10,000 word column to write, and it's got to be done at 2:30 a.m. So
you just have to get it done. Yeah.
What I do is I just write the next sentence. I mean, I don't try to make it William Faulkner. I just write the next sentence. And if it's crappy, maybe 1 or 2 of the sentences I write during the course of the week won't be crappy. But this week, a little bit of an exception. I had a little bit of a screed against David Tepper, the Panthers. That was done Saturday night. And I had a long bit about the 60th anniversary of the greatest Army-Navy game ever, which a lot of people say, why are you writing about the Army-Navy game in an NFL column? And the answer is because I want to, because it's interesting and it's really interesting. And so anyway, that's kind of how it works. And I used to write until about 4:30. And then I just said, this is horrible for my health, first of all. And I feel like crap. And I don't know how you can make sense of anything at 3:30 in the morning after being up all day, working all day. So I now have a deadline set of 2:30 in the morning Eastern time, and I will not write after that. So that's kind of the short version of it. So that's it.
I love it. You were talking about the anniversary of that Army-Navy game, and 49ers fans experienced an anniversary yesterday. Yesterday was 1 year to the day that Brock Purdy entered that Dolphins game for an injured Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think if you told anyone back then that a year later he'd have the kind of success that he's had since taking over the reins, I think most people probably would have thought you were crazy. I think most people, I know I was at that Dolphins game, that Dolphins 49ers game, and Garoppolo went down and my heart sunk because I was like, Brock Purdy is coming in. Who's this kid? Like,
your heart sunk because you thought this is a really good team in the season.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And I bet that's what Kyle Shanahan thought too.
Well, and it seems like maybe, but also it really genuinely seems like that team knew what they had in Brock Purdy prior to him even entering that Dolphins game. And they had a lot of confidence in him. And I think that's, again, speaks volumes about who the kid is.
Yeah.
But here we are a year later, and when you look at the numbers, Brock Purdy is having an MVP worthy season, and he looks like the long-term answer in San Francisco. What are your thoughts on Purdy and why he's been so successful?
46 starts or 47 at Iowa State. I mean, think about this. Between the time that Trey Lance was graduated from high school and the time he was traded to the Dallas Cowboys, collectively, he had thrown 400 and something passes. Yeah. That's in college and pro football.
Yeah.
Okay. Brock Purdy threw whatever he threw, 1,900 passes in 4 years in college. Mm-hmm. And what was great about his career is that he played for what wasn't a great team. Now, he made them very competitive at Iowa State, and a lot of us, I think, have gone back and asked Matt Campbell this question, the coach at Iowa State, how did this happen? Matt Campbell told me an incredible story when I called him last year about him. He goes, I put sort of an ode to Brock Purdy on everyone's stools in his senior year last year at Iowa State when he was leaving, because I just wanted everybody to know. And I wrote something really kind of nice about him. And I wanted everybody in that locker room to know, everybody in this program to know that it's Brock Purdy who lifted us up so that we can be in the top 25, so that people don't laugh at us anymore. It's Brock Purdy. And so, but the great thing, Kittle told me this too, last year during the season when he was just starting his journey. Kittle said, I think there's a great value to come out of a place where you lost a lot. Because you don't have everything handed to you. You've got to build it. And so he's used to really doing the dirty work. And a lot of times in this offense, everybody, I think the laughable thing about Brock Purdy is that I think everybody believes that Brock Purdy is system quarterback, just plug him in. Anybody can do this in Kyle Shanahan's offense. Well, how did C.J. Beathard do? How did Nick Mullins do? They had moments. Moments. How did Brian Hoyer do? How did Garoppolo do? Now, Garoppolo had some very good moments. And I'm not dogging in any way Garoppolo. But there is no comparison between the performance of Garoppolo over a long period of time and the 21-game performance of Brock Purdy so far. Brock Purdy is a legitimate MVP candidate. And look, you asked about that. Yeah, I have one of the 50 votes for MVP. I wrote in my column this week that as of now, which means nothing because there are 5 games left, you don't know what's going to happen. But as of now, he would be number 1 on my ballot. Now, having said that, I still am going to have to think very seriously about it for this big reason. When Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel were down, Brock Purdy played 3 games without them both, when both of them were out, or one or both was out, excuse me.
Yeah.
And he lost all 3. He threw a terrible interception at Minnesota that probably cost him the game. And they only scored 17 points in each game. So that's a mark against Brock Purdy for MVP. Shouldn't an MVP lift a diminished team? And the answer is yes. So I don't know how I'll vote on January 6th or 7th, whatever it is. But as of now, in total, he'd be my number 1 guy. And really, you say, well, what's the biggest reason? I think it's putting up 42 on each of the best 2 teams in the NFC, aside from the 49ers.
Yeah. And as an MVP voter, I did want to follow up with this question. It really does seem like over the last decade, you could even say since 2001, there's only been 3 non-quarterbacks to win MVP awards. All 3 of them were running backs. It was Sean Alexander, LaDainian Tomlinson, and Adrian Peterson. Yeah. And this year,
it's only been one in the last 15 years.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And so it really does seem like it has become more, you could call it the MVP, or I called it in a column that released today about my case for Brock Purdy as MVP, the QOTBT award, the quarterback of the best team award, because that's really what it seems like it has become largely. Do you feel like with the way that quarterback play has been this season, which is, I'm not going to say it's down, but but also it does seem a little bit down. Could this be a year where we see a non-quarterback like a Christian McCaffrey or a Tyreek Hill win the MVP award?
Well, in the last 6 years, this is relevant to your point. In the last 6 years, every most valuable player has been a quarterback from a top-seeded team in one of the conferences. And in the last 10 years, it's been a quarterback from either the top 1 or 2 seed in one of the 2 conferences. So it is that. And if, let's say, Tyreek Hill smashes Calvin Johnson's record of 1,964 receiving yards, and it seems like he will. If he goes way over 2,000, I could see him getting a lot of sentiment as the first non-quarterback to win it since Adrian Peterson 11 years ago. But I think I would kind of make this point overall about it. And I'm not saying I won't vote for Tyreek Hill. I might, but I'm not sure that I want to make a vote or cast a vote rather for the number 1 most valuable player and base it on a record not only set in a 17-game season, but on a record on a team where if you asked Mike McDaniel right now, you gave him sodium pentothal and asked him this question, got a big game this Sunday, and I am the injury god, and I am taking 1 player out of your lineup, Tyreek Hill or Tua Tagovailoa. Who do you want me to take so that you'll have the best chance to win? Mike McDaniel would never say this publicly, but he would take Tyreek Hill, take him out, because he would think that we have a better chance to win this game without Tyreek, but with Tua Tagovailoa. That's no knock against Tyreek. You can say that about almost any team. And that is the issue that I have with anybody being critical of the MVP voting. And look, I'm no, disciple of it. People, if the other 49 people feel differently, that's all right. I'm one vote. But the word is not most outstanding player. That might be Tyreek Hill, might be Christian McCaffrey. The word is most valuable player. And if tomorrow, if for some big playoff game, the 49ers had to play Sam Darnold, I'm not saying they would lose. I'm not in any way. I'm just saying that I think that would be the toughest guy to replace Brock Purdy in their lineup.
Imagine you're looking at a balancing scale with everything you do for other people on one side and everything you do for yourself on the other side. If it isn't balanced, maybe it's time to spend a little more time on you. And therapy is a great place to start. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist online who can help you find that balance and stick to it. Visit BetterHelp.com/positive to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/positive.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Whether you love true crime or comedy, celebrity interviews or news, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue. And guess what? Now you can call them on your auto insurance too with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. It works just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll show you coverage options that fit your budget. Get your quote today at Progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Nobody wants a surprise in their jelly donut. It's toothpaste? That's because the middle is the most important part. At Graybar, we're at the middle of electrical and datacom jobs across the country, connecting installers, facility managers, and business owners with smart solutions for their most challenging projects, which means stocking and delivering crucial products on time and on budget with no surprises, thanks to our nationwide logistics network. Yep, Graybar does that.
Peter, last question we had for you. John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have taken what might have been the worst roster in the league in 2017, and they've turned it into a perennial Super Bowl contender. There's been some mistakes along the way. Every team has them. But when you look at the talent they've acquired, not only on the field, but on the sidelines, 3 different coaches are head coaches now. in the front office, guys that are running other teams. They've done such a tremendous job. And I know you spent time with them. Why do you think this partnership has worked so well?
I think I'll give you, this is the best example, and then I do want to go back and tell you one story. I was very fortunate because I convinced Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch and Jed York to allow me to sit in their draft room during the first round in 2017, their first draft. So yep. I feel like I got a good sense of how they worked. Okay. So I'll tell you a story from this year, and then I want to transition back to 2017. And my story is, in March of this year, maybe late February, the 49ers truly had no intention whatsoever of basically doing anything other than maintenance in free agency. They just didn't have the money, and they wanted to save money to make sure they could sign all their guys in the future. Okay. But Kyle Shanahan poked his head into John Lynch's office one day and he goes, man, I'd love to get involved with Javon Hargrave. He could make us so much better. I want to get back to the way our defense was in 2019, where we had so many guys we could come at you in waves, blah, blah, blah. So Lynch and Shanahan had not planned on this. Certainly Jed York, the owner, had not planned on it. So Lynch called York and he said, hey, I need to talk to you about something. York stopped at his house on the way to his son's, I guess, Little League game on a Saturday morning. And Lynch said, listen, I know we said we weren't going to spend much this year, but Kyle and I really want to try to get Javon Hargrave. And York said, I don't know what he said, but in essence, he said, go ahead, go do it. And so that's a good example of how they work together and how much I think they respect each other. Now I'm going to go back to 2017. So 2017 was hardly the glory days of the 49ers drafting. Okay. They ended up with the third pick in the draft after trading down from number 2 and picked Solomon Thomas. Nice player, but certainly not worthy of the third pick in the draft. Mm-hmm. With the 31st pick in the draft, which they got in a trade, they picked Reuben Foster, who turned out to be close to an unmitigated disaster. So, the fortunate thing for them is that in the third round that year, they got C.J. Beathard, who turned into a usable piece. Not a great player, but a usable player. All right. And in the 5th round, obviously, they took George Kittle, and he's turned into one of the best tight ends in football. But here's the thing I would say that I think is really worth noting. Okay. And I think it's important. And by the way, DJ Jones that year was a good pick too, mm-hmm. In the 5th round or whatever it was.
Also the 5th. Yeah.
Yeah. But here's the story that I wanted to tell you. At the end of that first round, it was a Thursday night. It was late. And I see Kyle Shanahan at the draft board, and he's staring at the running back position. And I go over, and the draft is over. So I had just shut my mouth for like 3 hours or 4 hours, whatever it was. And now the draft is over, and I'm just flitting around the room talking to people. And I see Kyle, and I said, what are you looking at? And he goes, looking at the running backs. I'm looking at this guy, Joe Williams. I said, who's Joe Williams? And he goes, well, he's a running back that got really devalued because of some problems he had in college, but I absolutely love him. And he's, had major knocks on him because of a couple of things that happened to him in college. I think he was kicked off one team because they thought he stole property from a teammate. I don't remember the exact
laptop
story. Yeah, I don't remember the exact story. But so anyway, Kyle is looking at the board and he says, I really want this guy. I want him, but I forget there was some color code or some dot next to him that meant he was not going to be. The 49ers had an undraftable grade on him. So, but now that he was still there, this was, I should say this was Friday night now. This was after round 3. So anyway, they basically are trying to get ready for the last day of the draft. And so Kyle said, I'm going to talk to John about Joe Williams. So Kyle goes in, talks to John Lynch. And the next morning, I phoned Lynch and I talked to him about it. And he goes, yeah, I talked to Joe Williams on the phone today. I think he said for like 30 minutes. I really wanted to interview him. Kyle wants him, and we have to decide whether we're gonna go for him. He had some ungodly games in college. He rushed for over 300 yards for Utah in the Rose Bowl against UCLA. He had some bizarre games, but Kyle really wanted him. The only reason I'm telling you the story, yes, they picked him in the 4th round. They sort of went against we don't really think this is a draftable player. He's got some behavior things. And they went against it and they picked him. You know what I learned from that night? John Lynch did not want to take Joe Williams, but his head coach wanted to take Joe Williams. And if Kyle Shanahan wanted to, he could have put his foot down and he could have said, we're taking this bleeping guy. Mm-hmm. But they reached a consensus. And John Lynch said, I know this is important to Kyle. And because it's important to Kyle, we're going to do it. I think it's important if your head coach has more of a conviction on this player than anybody on the board right now. I want to do this. So they ended up picking him. And you know what? He failed. That's not the story. The story is that Kyle could have put his foot down and say, damn it, we're going to be taking him. But he didn't do that. He said, John, I really want to take him. And Lynch talked to him. And instead of being forced into taking him, John Lynch basically agreed with Kyle, maybe because he wanted to give this one to Kyle, but he agreed with Kyle and they picked him. That has been their working relationship. It's not a dictatorial thing from either side. And that's one of the things that I think long-term bodes really well for, for how this relationship is going to work. And look, I'm sorry to take that on a 5-minute sermon, but I thought the story was worth it for you guys.
Mutual respect.
Yeah, for sure. Peter, this was an honor for us. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show.
Sure. Hey, it was my pleasure, guys. Thanks a lot, and good luck with the pod.
1, 2, 3. Hey!
2400 Sports is an Odyssey company.